So welcome to the first of the IFS User Group Summer Conference events. This is a replacement for the annual conference 2020, which we unfortunately had to cancel. We're very sad not to be seeing everybody this year, and we hope that our summer conference will help make up for the absence of an actual conference this year. I hope we find you all safe and well in these strange times. This is the first of our live virtual events, so please forgive us if we have any teething problems. We have run a practice session which went well, so fingers crossed. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Amanda Miller. I'm the manager of the user group. The user group is run by a committee of volunteers who all work for IFS customers. We also have a couple of committee members who work for IFS and who assist us with liaison between our members and the company. The user group is independent of IFS, which allows us the freedom to react promptly to requests from our members. And as members, we need you to stay in touch with us and to let us know if you ever have any concerns or requests that you'd like us to follow up on your behalf. The presentation for today has been supplied by our partner Anthesis, and the title is IFS for HR, Top 3 Quick Wins. Today you should learn how to release the value of IFS for HR with 3 quick wins that can be easily implemented alongside your employee register without waiting for phase 2. See how to switch on IFS functions to support your recruitment process, offboarding and disciplinary and grievance management, and enable your HR team to deliver benefits quickly and become seamlessly integrated with the rest of your operational processes. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer option. If you are registered anonymously, please add your name. Anonymous questions may not be asked. I will put all questions to our presenter at the end of the presentation. If we don't manage to get through all the questions, we'll ask for them to be answered after the event. The event today will be videoed and the recording will be available to all members on the archived page of our website a few days after the event. So that leaves me to introduce our speaker, Jeremy Fothergill. Jeremy has been with Anthesis for approximately 4 months, since just before lockdown. However, you may have seen him speak at our user group events before in a different guise. He has over 20 years of IFS experience as a consultant and as a customer. This includes 4 years working with IFS as a project manager and consultant. He also has IFS experience as a customer, selecting and implementing IFS in manufacturing and distribution organisations, and leading the global rollout of IFS with a project engineering company to 30 offices based in 5 different continents. Jeremy lives in Yorkshire and apparently falls off motorbikes for fun. So I shall hand you over. Jeremy, don't forget to put your sound on.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Thumbs up if you can hear me, Amanda. Okay, great. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks very much for that introduction, Amanda, and welcome to a very wet and windy Yorkshire. This is the Anthesis UK and Ireland user group session. It's very interesting and a little bit scary, I think, to be the first session. I was a bit disappointed yesterday in the practice run when Amanda told me that you'd be able to see me, but unfortunately I wouldn't be able to see you. I had sort of visions of all these little squares on my screen with heads of people sitting behind their desks at home. It's been a bit like Ranganation if anybody's been watching that on the TV, and I did consider we could have a game of trousers or no trousers at the end of the session, but let's not. So let's move on. As Amanda mentioned there, I've attended the user group more times as a delegate than I have as a provider, and what I thought about when we were putting this session together was, what is it that you want to get from the user group session? And I think really you look for 2 things, or then what you're wanting is awareness. You want to know what's going on in the IFS world, what big events are happening in the future, what's the planning that's going on, and IFS always do a good job of giving us an update on that. But more than that, as well as just looking at what things you're going to be planning in the budgets for the future years, you really hope to take something away, something practical that you can actually do something with straight away, something that you're educated on. And that's the focus that we want to put onto this session. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to take you through where we think we can deliver, or where you can also deliver your own improvements into the HR functionality of IFS. Let me go on to share. Okay, I'm hoping now that everybody can see my screen. Okay, so this came about. We can. Great. Thanks, Amanda. Okay, so this came about because what we often see in HR is we see a very efficient employee register in place there, and perhaps not enough attention turned to other areas of the IFS HR, which really has improved in functionality over the last few years. And it doesn't have to be a major project to take benefit from those. There are ways that you can extend that employee register quite quickly. So that's what I'm going to take you through now. I appreciate not everybody, in fact, probably very few are going to remember the 90s who were attending this session today, but I certainly do. And what I do remember, in those days, you had PowerPoint and you had 20 pieces of clip art, and that was it. And there was no internet for images, and it cost a fortune to get a JPEG made. So everybody had this duck bashing a computer on their PowerPoints, and you'd roll your eyes when it came up again. So I apologise if you've done that again this time. But what it represented was the frustration that came, and that the landscape has changed enormously, but the frustration can still be there. And I think perhaps in HR and an ERP implementation, it can exist, because HR doesn't sit at the centre of an ERP implementation. It's all around the manufacturing, it's all around the project engineering, the recipe production, etc. HR is a critical component of that, but it's not the central focus. So things get pushed into phase 2, and then phase 2 gets delayed. So you don't get the benefit. So what we want to do is show that you can actually get there quite quickly without having to go through some major re-implementation or wait for some major phase 2 session again. So let's define what we mean by a quick win. Really, where ERP implementation slowed down is when you get that major organisational change and you've got that coordination to come through. So what we've picked on is areas where it's very focused. HR can take ownership and drive those through. And it's really areas as well where you don't have to take all the functionality at once. You can get good benefits straight away without actually going through the whole module implementation. And the benefits you get, why should you do these? Why do a quick win? Well, it's really the same as an ERP benefit that you get. Everybody's got good drivers for why they're going through this ERP change. They're always centered on single source of truth and consistency of data. And that's what we can also drive with just these quick wins as well. The big difference with here is they're a foundation step. They're also the first stage towards taking more benefit out of the rest of the HR system. Everything should be measurable, so including this webinar. So what's the success? What we've set for this is I'd like you to evaluate at least one of these quick wins at the end of this session. I believe that's certainly achievable. For those of you who maybe haven't done a lot of the setup of IFS, then we've got some good news for you, because we've got some ways that we can help you. I probably should qualify that. If anybody from Yorkshire is also listening, then that good news comes for free. Let's look at what we're going to cover. We've got these 3 areas. We've been quite ambitious. These aren't small areas of IFS HR. These are quite big processes, but we know that we can deliver these quite quickly. So I'm going to take you through each of these and then show you the steps that you could follow to get advantage of those. Okay, let's start with the first one, recruitment. Could be that people are sort of raising their eyebrows a bit, because if anyone's got experience of IFS HR recruitment, that's a big module. That's a comprehensive, a very neat module, and it's extended quite a lot. But we believe and we can see that you can get a quick win into the recruitment if we focus on the personal requisitions. So personal requisitions, if you can get that tracked through IFS, not only does that bring immediate benefit, but it really does form the basis for the bringing in the rest of the HR recruitment module later. Personal requisitions, critical that that's tracked somewhere. You're probably, if you're not doing that in IFS, you're probably doing that in Excel, or worse still, you're getting phone calls on a Friday afternoon asking you to get an induction program sorted for somebody who's turning up on Monday, and PS, can you ask IT to get hold of a laptop for them, and that does happen. I've got very recent evidence of those kind of things. So there's a real benefit from getting a formalized personal requisition system in, and we can do that in IFS quite quickly. Here I've just very quickly summarized what the recruitment module of IFS looks like. The blue area there is covers the module, and then the interface with perhaps some other areas within HR. But let's get these light blue areas up and running. We'll show you how you can do that, and then you can move on and consider about candidate management and evaluation of the selection process, which is some very, very good functionality to support that in IFS in these, particularly in these later releases. So the scenario we're going to do, the purpose of the demonstration now that you're going to see, is that will take you through the setting up of a requisition. The objective there is to show you really how simple that is to operate. This isn't a major training exercise, a major rollout exercise to get this in. So let me hit the button, and that'll take you through a quick demonstration of how to operate just the personal requisition part of recruitment.
So let's look at how IFS can help us track all the new hires that are going on throughout the organisation. For that, we create new personal requisitions. So we want a new person to come in, and we believe it's going to be an external person, and it's going to join our maintenance department as a maintenance supervisor. Where are we going to position them? In Glasgow, and they're full-time. And we expect applicants to be in by the end of the month. So what we've done is we've created the bare minimum in order to register that there is a new hire taking place in the organisation. We might want to classify our new hires into different groups. So this one's due to expansion. So we're going to Scotland. Okay. Now, if we look at all our outstanding requests, here's the one that we've just entered, but you can see we're now starting to build up a full list of new hires taking place, what status they're at, when we expect these things to be finished and these events to happen, who's responsible for them, etc. All the things that you might want to know. In this case, I'll just approve it. And what we can do now, we're not monitoring and managing all the recruitment through IFS at this stage. We're just getting the quick win of getting the requisitions in. So what we'll do is at the end of the process and the new hire has come in, then we can register that new employee against this particular requisition. At this stage, we haven't created the employee, so we're going to need to add in that this was an external person, and IFS doesn't know anything about them. So let's add in some details about that candidate. So this is Jose Mourinho, and that's it. That's as much as we need to do. We could close this now, go back and register that Jose was our successful maintenance supervisor. But we could also choose, we haven't got to the point of adding the employee, and you'll recognise this information that will appear in your employee register later, but there's nothing to stop us adding them at this point. So Jose was born in York, and he's male, and he's married. So we can build up this information now, but we can also add additional information that doesn't appear in the employee register. For example, the references that we got. You could say who supplied those references. You could use document management to capture the actual reference information. So once we've got all of that added, we've added the applicant, we can go back in here and to our requisition. And now we will see that Jose Mourinho is available, and we can set him up as an applicant against this job. And when we can go through and actually appoint him as our successful candidate. So he was appointed today and he's full-time. Okay, do you want to fill the employee file now? Yes, let's do that, because this is the screen that you'll be familiar with if you're adding employees into IFS. Normally you'll do this for somebody who's new through the new person. Here we can do it straight from the appointed candidate. Much quicker process. We've already got all the name information. We've got most of the job information that we need. We know which organisation and what position he's going to be in. And you can see that where you've entered additional information back in the appointment, so he was born in York and married, all that information carries through automatically. So it will now go ahead and create our employee for us. And it will ask what we want to do with the requisition. We'll say yes, we want to fulfill it. Do you want to decline other candidates? We haven't got other candidates in there, but if maybe we wanted to keep a register of very good, strong candidates who came for this job. So if we want to look back later, we can find out their details. But we'll say no in this case, and that's it. The requisition is now fulfilled. If we look at our overview, what we'll see is our maintenance supervisor is gone. These other requisitions are still going through their different stages. But we've now started to keep a track of all the different requisitions that are taking place in the organisation, all the new hires that are taking place, on what stage they're at, and we've got some information recorded against those.
Great, thanks for that. Sorry for the interruption there, the sound, but hopefully what you've picked up from that is just to get started with entering your requisitions, getting your requisitions register into IFS, put in a little bit of functionality around that. That doesn't take a lot to set that up, particularly if you're currently running that in Excel and you want to transfer it into IFS. I wouldn't be put off by that. I would put that in the classification of quick win, but by far the biggest advantage you're going to get is you can now start to consider all these other parts of the recruitment module, and you'll start to see how you can maybe bring those into your operation as well. Okay, obviously there is basic data that needs to be set up as part of that. As I say, these have been selected because they really are quite small setup issues. The main benefit as well is that they're relatively standalone, so you're setting up the basic data for this. You know you're not risking any impact on any other part of the business. Okay, let's leave recruitment now and let's move on to our next one. Offboarding is the next one that I want to look at, and I think if you're not using the offboarding assistant, then I would really encourage you to evaluate that, because I think IFS have been very clever here. They've done two things. For those of you who are on older versions and have been trying to offboard employees and go through all the different parts of IFS where they may have assignments and close those down, that's a lot of work. That's a big headache, and that has all been addressed through this assistant really very efficiently. But the other thing they've done is they've taken the opportunity to give us the chance to build good practice, best practice techniques into the offboarding process. And this is something that quite often gets missed in organisations. You may have good checklists for onboarding, but offboarding can often be a bit hit and miss as to how well that's run and whether all the steps are followed. So the one thing that the assistant drives is the ability to set those templates up and run those through. It's a very simple process, is offboarding in IFS. Once you've got it set up, and again the setup's not going to take a lot of effort, but you can select the template, you start the offboarding, and then you can track the actions that are taking place or not taking place and follow them up. So we're going to run another demonstration now. I'm really hoping that we've all got our fingers crossed for the sound staying on. And in this demonstration, we'll show the offboarding process, and we'll use we've got a maintenance supervisor. He's going to leave us to join a competitor. So how would we offboard that using the assistants?
So let's look at offboarding an employee by using the assistant. In my case here, we're going to select a single employee. If you've got groups of employees to offboard, there are ways of doing that by putting in selection criteria. But in this case, we've just selected one maintenance supervisor. And the next step that we do is we give some information about that offboarding. So when were we notified of the date? Well, we were notified on Friday, and we've agreed that the employment is going to end on the end of the month. So this is termination. So this will affect the way that the dates are handled through the automated offboarding process. What's the reason for leaving? So we can now start to build up the analysis. Well, let's say in this case, he's gone to join a competitor because he wants to move to a different location. And the status for now, we're going to straight away move him into a leaver status. And then when he does leave, we'll move him into the competitor group. We often see that there's only one group defined for former employees. It can be quite useful to split those down into ones that you would definitely rehire, ones who maybe you want to keep track of people who've gone off to competitors, etc. And that will come into effect as soon as they leave on the 30th of June. Now, the main advantage of running the assistant is that it will automatically process all the different dates throughout the whole of IFS, and anyone who's tried to manually offboard an employee and manually adjust the dates in the different locations will know how difficult that is. So all of these, most of these are going to get set to the date when they leave. It's got some intelligence built in. It's saying, well, training we're going to do from the date of when they handed their notice in. So immediately we're going to remove them from any training courses that they're already booked on. So it's helping you all the way through. The other significant advantage is this screen here on the termination process, because what this allows you to do is you can define your procedure for what happens when an employee leaves to join a competitor. So these are the steps that we must go through. You can add additional steps on the fly here, so we can put an extra step in there if we need to, but it will tell us that these are the steps that we should go through, and it will automatically, based on the position of the different people. So I've specified that the exit interview will be carried out by the HR director, and it'll be carried out within 2 weeks of the notice of leaving the company. So Janet Parkin is HR director. She's been applied to that, and I've set this date automatically on the task list. And we can see that emails can be automatically sent. So again, not only does it ensure that all the steps are carried out, you've got those efficiency savings because it's automating the process that goes through. So once we've done all of those steps, then we can go on and it will review all the different dates and see whether they're all valid to be terminated at that time. In this case, we've got no errors, so we can just continue with that. It will show us the activity log, so these are the steps. Emails have been sent. It will give us confirmation that all the parts of IFS have been updated successfully all the way through, so we know this process is going to happen correctly. The other step that we can do, all these termination actions, if we go into the termination action screen here, then you can keep track of all the different activities that need to be taken place that are associated with the offboarding of the different employees. You can see my activities associated with Jürgen here that are overdue, anything that was due today or before, and then other ones that are coming up that we're not too worried about yet, but we can at least keep track of those. And these actions are already shown on a number of the HR lobbies, but they can obviously be added to management lobbies, and that way you're keeping a good track and ensuring that all the different termination process actions are taking place.
Okay, so again, what I'm hoping you've seen there is to actually operate the offboarding process is really quite a straightforward step, and the efficiency savings that you get from how it goes about removing that employee from IFS are just fantastic. But also it does help drive good practice for offboarding procedures within your organisation, so it can be a neat way to bring that in. Okay, let's look at the next step. The last one that I want to look at is disciplinary and grievance, and this certainly meets the criteria for a quick win, because when you look at the module, I think IFS has done a great job of how they've designed this, because everything is contained within one screen. So it's very easy to manage and maintain your disciplinary and grievance actions and issues just through one area. It doesn't take a lot to learn how that works. The basic data is unique to this area, so again, you can just set it up knowing that you're not impacting on anywhere else. But I think the other side of disciplinary and grievance that's well worth mentioning is that it also can work as a toolkit to help people follow the right steps. So there's lots of issues around what are the exact procedures that need to be followed in certain cases relating to a disciplinary, what's the steps that need to be followed depending on the outcome of that disciplinary. Well, the way that IFS have designed this, you can set up your basic data in such a way that it will actually support the operator to take those steps and make sure they're following the right bit, and give them the opportunity to register all the right information against each of those steps. So you've got a good comprehensive record of anything relating to disciplinary and grievance. It really depends on how you're setting up the basic data. The example I'm going to take you through now really shows that we can not just follow a process, but we split that into two. Once we've registered the issue, we've got an investigation process. We may have multiple outcomes, and depending on the outcome that you select, it'll guide you through the right steps to go through. So there's a little bit more work in setting up the data, but again, the good news there is we're going to provide you with something that will help you go through that so you can evaluate that properly. The demonstration that we're going to do, we're going to look at past issues related to an employee, then we're going to register and conclude a new issue, and you'll see how IFS guides you to follow the right steps relating to that. Okay, here we go.
So let's look at how IFS supports our disciplinary and grievance procedures. I'll first demonstrate this by searching for issues relating to one employee. So you can see there when this is in use, you can quite easily get a list of all the historical issues that have taken place against an employee. Let's go ahead now and create a new one. Again, we'll use this same employee. So we've got a new disciplinary, and it's a disciplinary. And what is very neat about the disciplinary and grievance part of IFS is that everything is centered on one screen, so it's quite easy to follow, it's quite easy to understand, and it's also not so difficult to set up because everything happens in just one area. So for this issue for Richard, it's another occurrence of poor attendance, so it's a misconduct issue, and I've decided it's poor attendance. All of this is configurable. So the date actually was yesterday. This is when he failed to show up for work again at 9 o'clock. And we can make a record as detailed or as summarized as we want. Any comments? So now what we've done is we've recorded the issue. But what's very neat about this is, depending on how you set up the actions that you want to take, then when you select your template, in this case we're going to say that this is a subsequent absent without leave, so we're going to select the second investigation option, and what that will do, that will pull in the actions that are relevant to that particular issue. So this is bringing in your procedures into play so that you can record what action you took against each of these steps and what the conclusion of each of these steps were. You can set dates for when you expect things to happen. So we expect this to be done today, and we're going to assign it to his supervisor. As I say, you could then record the comments when it took place. So you've got a record of all the different things that happened, who was responsible for them and what they did. You can complete these when they're done, so you can see what's outstanding and keep track of all the different issues that are going on throughout it. But what you can also do as well is, against the meeting, you can set up different people who are involved in that and the roles that they played, which is not to do with their normal roles. So the head of operations might sit as the head of disciplinary committee on a particular event, etc. And when you've gone through all these steps and you've got an outcome, then you can update the template to say, well, what are the actions that we need to follow as a result of that outcome? So we're going to issue a final written warning in this case, for example. And now what it'll do, it'll append further actions that need to take place relating to the issuing a final written warning. Again, a reminder of the procedure and the ability for you to record the different steps that took place and who did them. When everything's taken place, I'll just very quickly complete all of these. And we can give an overall outcome. So again, it's the written warning, and that enables us to easily analyse all the different disciplinary events that have took place. We can give it a date when we intend for that to expire. So that's going to run for a year. Save all of that, complete it. And now when we go back and review the disciplinaries, so let's look again for Richard. We can see now we've got his first misconduct for poor attendance, and it's been added to with his second misconduct. So you can start to quite easily register disciplinary grievance. You've got controls in there to ensure that the right steps are followed, and it's easy then to monitor the history of what particularly happened against one individual, etc.
Okay, so what I hope you get from that is that the disciplinary and grievance process, there's a lot of things that that take place within that, and IFS have managed to really condense that down and provide quite a simple way of registering and tracking all that information. And again, it falls into this quick win because it really doesn't take a lot to actually set up all the background information that's required for that. Okay, what we'll do now, I mean, maybe the other thing to mention as well, we didn't touch on things like document management, custom fields that can all be added really quite quickly into this, and you can really enhance not just disciplinary and grievance, that could be the same for your recruitment, and you can start to build, once you've got those processes in, then you really can start to build the functionality and really get more out of IFS. So those were the 3 quick wins that we wanted to show you. We now look at how you would go about implementing those quick wins. So the steps that you would follow, because we're not talking about doing a major phase 2 extension to your ERP implementation. We're talking about cherry picking some of the good functionality there and setting that up and getting it running. So you first need to become familiar with the operation. As Amanda said, you'll get copies of this presentation that shows you what the operation is like in IFS for each of those and how those can be used. So that doesn't take much to get up to that stage. Then there's a bit of work to prepare and test your basic data and see how that runs, and then run the process in your test environment to the point where actually, yeah, you've got that working. And once you've tested it and confirmed it and signed that off that it's working okay, then yeah, get it into the live and you get a quick win. I mentioned the good news. I think for disciplinary and grievance, I think that's a really neat part of IFS that if you're not making use of, then you really should consider it. And to help you get started with that, we're going to provide our guide, our quick startup guide. It's not an extension of the IFS help. This is a different approach. This will give you a step-by-step process to create all the basic data that you need, and then a step-by-step process to operate that basic data in that screen. You can, if you're not really familiar with all of this part, if you're a bit wary about doing these kind of things in IFS, then you can just follow it parrot fashion. If you can use IFS, you will be able to make your way through that guide. And what we do know is people learn best by doing. So if you follow that through, I guarantee at the end of it, you will really have a good understanding of what the IFS disciplinary and grievance offers you. And I still think you can get the same from recruitment and offboarding. The IFS help there will point you at the right areas of basic data, and they're a little bit easier to set up. So I'm really hopeful that you'll do that. I would love to get any feedback on the quick reference guide, and of course Anthesis, we're not just involved in HR, we're involved in sales, implementation and support for the whole of the IFS modules, and if you need any support in these areas, then of course we're there to help. I'll maybe just touch on one thing. It might come up, I know I've already come up in the question. In the world of IFS HR, then Arena user interface is a big topic. I've deliberately chosen to do this demonstration in EE because I think that's what most of you are probably operating, so that becomes more relevant, and it also stops us being too confused about Arena and the changes in Arena and not concentrating on the functionality. I have run each of these steps in the Arena front end. It's really not difficult to transfer, so if you are running Arena, then I think you'll make that transition quite easily from one to the other. Thank you very much for listening to that. I do hope that you get something out of it, and more than that, I hope you try it, and even better, I hope you succeed in getting some more of IFS functionality up and running. Okay, Amanda, how do you want to take back over the session?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put your face on the screen so everybody can see you. Okay. We've only had one question so far. So if anyone else has questions, now is your chance. You should have an icon in the top right hand side of your screen with a question mark on it. That's where you would ask any questions. So the one that I've received is which of the IFS versions do the last 2 quick wins apply to? Do you know?
Yes, yeah, that's a really good point actually, because that's going to be a bit frustrating if you're on some of the earlier versions and don't have these, but maybe that's going to inspire you to think about doing the upgrade. Let's go through all of them. The recruitment, that's been around a long time in various forms, but has improved a lot. 2001, I think it was definitely in 7.5 was the early stages of it. So you will have access to that. The offboarding, that's a version 10, I think is when that came in. And one thing about offboarding as well is that once you've got that up and running, IFS have also introduced some very neat onboarding functionality in version 10. So it's a neat step from move to one to the other. But yeah, that is in the very later release. And just to mention, the onboarding is only available in the Arena user interface. So that sort of is a very clear message as to where IFS are going with the user interface. The Disciplinary and Grievance, that came in version 9 as part of the standard application. But there are VAPs available before that, these value-added products that were floating around, even from as far away as 2001. I think that was brought in. So the door isn't closed if you aren't running on version 9. So if you're running on an earlier version then and you're keen to move into that area, then please get in touch with us and we can evaluate, because that may still be available to you.
Okay, lovely. So I think you've covered our second question, which was how can we do this in Apps 9? And our next question, are there other quick start guides available in addition to the Discipline and Grievance guide?
There can be. I'd be very keen to hear some feedback on that when people look at it, because this could be a useful approach. These quick start guides, we've given this one on a way to help you get started, but it's the kind of thing that we would do if we'd been in with a client and we'd been looking at supporting the introduction of functionality. Then during the day we'd start to develop these kind of guides, so that when we've gone away they've got a full record of how to do it. So we've accumulated a number of these that we can bring out. I think for the 2 areas that I showed you, then I think with the IFS help, then if you're a competent IFS user, then chances are you can work out. You don't necessarily need the same level of detail as what we're going to provide you for this one. But yeah, we plan to have more of these quick guides available, because we've focused on HR, and for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because it seems to be a little bit of the poor relation sometimes in the IFS implementation. But this doesn't just apply. There's lots of areas throughout IFS where we reckon we can go a quick win approach, and it's an alternative to doing some major implementation. So yes, there will be more guides available.
Lovely, thank you. On the Disciplinary and Grievance, is there a way to modify the action completed date sometimes we may want to fill in details about when the action was completed retroactively, but currently I think it's linked to the system date.
The action, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's a very good point, and I've noticed that you can't go through and it just says, yeah, you've done it. So quite often your administration might be following on from when you actually did the events, and to have a true and proper record, you want to say that that informal meeting took place on that particular date. The way that IFS have set that up, that is more about when you completed it in IFS, and the two don't always match. I'm going to look into that, because when I was doing it, sort of Anthesis, I'm going to dig into that. So if, I'm assuming, Amanda, we've got the details of people who are asking these questions, so I can do a follow-up and just see whether or not we can change that with some kind of event.
Yes, I believe we can get back to the people directly, so that's fine.
Yeah, if we've got that, that's fine. I'll go through. I'm not going to commit to anything. My feeling is that through some kind of event, we should be able to get back into that date and find a way of changing it. But I'll do a bit of a follow up, and then we'll provide some proper answer to that.
Okay, lovely. Does the recruitment model calculate time to recruit?
Does the time to recruit? Is there something in a lobby that shows that? Probably not as it stands. So if you're looking, if you've gone through the recruitment process in IFS, so you've maybe had, what I'm understanding this question to be is, maybe over the last 6 months you've recruited 30 different people, and you've started that recruitment process, and it's taken you a period of time before you've been able to complete that process. Each of the steps are captured through the recruitment module, and because they're captured, then they're timestamped, so we know when things took place, we know when the requisition was made, and we know when the appointment was made. So from start to finish, we've got a time span. So either through some kind of report, or probably through a lobby, I would imagine that's going to be relatively straightforward to then give you some kind of analysis as to what your average period of time is to perform recruitment. I don't think, thinking through the lobbies, I don't think that's there as one of the standards. If it isn't, then that's certainly something that we could put together, because all the data's sitting in there to tell us when the process started and when it ended.
Okay. In recruitment, there are some standard document templates for letters, etc. Are they the same for grievance?
No, not in the same way. That's one of the big, we didn't touch on all the benefits of recruitment, and you're right. I think for people who use the IFS one, to have all those standard documents and then be automated, automatically produced when they appoint the right candidate, so everybody else gets a rejection letter, etc. That's really good functionality. That doesn't exist in the disciplinary and grievance. So you'd be looking at maybe some processes around events to push those out. One of the things that it does do in the disciplinary grievance is that it can forward the emails onto people. So I don't know if you saw on there, there's boxes about tick the emails, so you can automatically send an email for an event that needs to take place, but for something more formal within it, as in a proper record of the action to send to somebody who's the subject of a disciplinary, then no, that doesn't sit as standard functionality like it does in the recruitments, but there are ways of achieving that. Document management certainly can do that. You can force information through there about the candidate and the dates, etc., into a document and use that to push it out.
Good. We've had a request that if there are any questions answered at a later date, if they can be shared with everybody. So obviously we'll do that, that's fine. And has there been any improvements in the recruitment module with regards to the web front end for advertisement and applicants?
There's, okay, I'm not sure I fully get the question. There is certainly a lot of changes in the later version for interfaces through with third parties. So there are some standard tools now available within the recruitment, specifically to the recruitment, for pushing information out to third-party web tools and retrieving candidate information back in from third parties. So that process is well managed and well structured now in the later versions of IFS. If that's the answer, if that was the question, then that's definitely the answer. In terms of if web front end directly within IFS, I'm not sure. If that isn't the right answer, then please send the question through to me and I will get an answer.
Lovely. Okay, well, that appears to be the end of all the questions. So thank you very much, Jeremy. I think you've done an excellent job. We appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you very much. Oh,
no problem. Thank you.
Bear with me. I think I have another question. Sorry, let me pop you back on the screen. Last question. What are some of the significant changes in 10 that customers should be considering?
In 10 within, and I'm assuming we're talking about HR. That's a very big question, isn't it? Within the HR, I think recruitment's taken a major step forward. And I've touched on it, the interfaces to the third parties. That's a really very neat part of it. The bits that we haven't touched on, the bits that are probably more regularly adopted in phase 1 of IFS, which are things like the time registration, things around that. There's been a lot of improvements on the self-service side, so there's better functionality to use in terms of self-service for updating employees, being able to access and update their own employment information, to be able to register things like holiday requests, to be able to register time. Some of those areas where there's been apps and things available, the apps that IFS have provided, then those have been condensed more into the actual user interface themselves, the self-service side, and that's really with the bringing about of Arena. So Arena, because it's so web-based, it's very easy to add on these sort of self-service parts of it. So for employees to be able to access their own information, that's been a big area. And I think the efficiency gains, the offboarding and onboarding in 10, those are significant. That offboarding, say for anyone who's aware of the heartache of going through updating IFS to really get rid of an employee correctly out of the system, then this is a great step forward. But IFS in general for apps 10, yeah, I would love to talk forever about all the different things that have happened throughout the whole of IFS. And by all means, again, please get in touch and we can have that conversation.
Lovely. So thank you very much, Jeremy. I think that's gone really well, and we appreciate all the effort that you've put in towards preparing and presenting that for us. And thank you to Anthesis for allowing you to do that. And to everyone who's been watching, please do let us have any feedback that you've got. This is our very first summer conference event, and we'd appreciate your perspective on how it all went and if there's anything we can improve. Please book other events in the summer conference. We've got lots of bookings already, but we'd love to see you all there. And thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for continuing to support the user group, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.